When deciding what thrilling Terraria challenge to do next, increased enemy size was probably not something you'd expect to rank high on this list. However, despite on the surface not posing too much of a threat, in hindsight completely revolutionizes the way you play Terraria, and is actually the most brain-numbingly difficult playthrough we've done so far. Oh yeah, we are in for quite the journey today, which without further delay would begin impacting our playthrough almost immediately, with something as simple as this blue slime
It's the king slime.
truly making me realize just how much bigger 10 times really was. I mean, come on. And these are only Terraria's small enemies. So anyway, with us first building a quick house for our regular sized guide, thank god he's not a giant, I suppose it was time to get exploring our freaky world, which after finding this boomerang as our first actual weapon, did make me begin to ponder the many pros and cons of living in a world inhabited by mutants. In that for one, although aiming and hitting targets myself would be a hell of a lot easier, on the contrary, so it would be for them also. Additionally, while nothing could stop my stupendous levels of skill issue,
Oh my.
having a full weapon arsenal to play with would be an absolute luxury, especially after my last 4 or 5 Terraria playthroughs restricting weapon access in some way. Before we could even consider picking effective weapons though, we still had an early game to get through, which with 10 times larger enemies, shock horror, does make it bloody hard, with enemies you'd usually just run straight by and ignore,
Oh, the zombies are here.
essentially becoming, well, far from ignorable now. So as we try and make it through the hellish landscape that is our corruption, complete with massive claw monsters of death, I think the message was that exploring the surface was not the play right now. So let's head to the lovely tight passages of the underground, where hopefully far less supersized enemies could reach me.
What the?
Nope! As although early to confirm, despite enemies' hitboxes scaling, it does seem that this has had no impact on the spawning mechanics in any way, meaning we were in for a whole host of jump scares. Thankfully though, with an improved ice boomerang and bow in hand, just this little bit of offensive scaling did us wonders back on the surface, with eaters now being the epitome of more bark than bite. Like, we've gotta remember these things only have like 80 health. That's enough power tripping for now though, because curiosity was about to give us a huge awakening, in the form of an unescapable jump scare from the biggest dungeon guardian you've ever seen.
Oh my god.
I know this doesn't seem like a big deal for now, but isn't Skeletron's head gonna be the same size? Nah, it'll be fine, because we still had plenty to be cracking on with, including some general armor and tool upgrades, and ooh, looks like our merchant has just moved in. At least that means we can get our bug net.
What? No. No. What?
That's quite a large man, which may have just turned already the most cursed Terraria playthrough into something spectacularly weird, as how in God's name was I gonna house all future NPCs? I guess we'll have to cross that bridge when we get there, because for now, let's give Rupert here a nice little New York apartment with just about enough space to sit down in. Ah, much better. Oh, and yeah, he can't actually get out. Right then. With the grip on our very bizarre world beginning to stabilize nicely, I really wanted to begin tunnel visioning a build that exploit our enemies' increased size.
I forgot about Harpy.
As weapons that cover large amounts of space would be very effective today. Oh, which is why the Star Fury was my first choice, as not only would accuracy not matter anymore, but it gave us the chance to hit things anywhere on the screen, which when enemies are usually covering at least a third of it, just made sense. And my god, what an upgrade this was, finally giving us the legs required to blitz through our junk. No, I'm completely lying, because as it turns out, the projectiles enemies fire are also 10 times larger, and by the looks of things, have an unreliable hitbox at best. Worrying, but not one-sided, as there was still many things to like about today's challenge, in that I could not only mine a too wide tunnel without having to clog it up, but marvel at the struggles of an enemy spawning completely stuck. Still though, even if we managed to keep the enemies under control, regular-sized Terraria hazards would always get the last laugh.
That boulder was regular size though.
Okay then, if you want me back on the surface, I suppose it was time to make an arena, as with our Platinum Bow and Star Fury dishing out consistently high damage to anything that challenged us, I guess it was time to bring on one big, No, massive. No, gargantuan Eye of Cthulhu, which I thought I'd made a large enough arena for. You know, a bit longer than normal, but couldn't have been any less realistic for the reality of our situation. Because holy, somehow this was even bigger than what my over-exaggerated imagination could have conjured up. I mean, it's half the flipping screen. And yeah, this obviously resulted in a death, as we essentially just tried to take out a dreadnought battleship with a life raft. Back to the drawing board for us, I guess. With our attention now on defense.
Oh god.
You see, one of the short-term solutions for fighting such an early game boss like the Eye was simply out-tanking it. And with our mobility options still rather limited at this point, I figured killing this thing from within would be our best bet to get the ball rolling. As if we can't escape it, let's outlive it. Which after upgrading to a lovely full set of platinum armor, and at least tripling our arena's length so we could at least attempt to avoid some damage, we were ready to... No.
Oh, you kidding me, man?
Because I guess the invasion of mammoth slime balls was upon us first, with some of the largest rain droplets you've ever seen. This part I wasn't too worried about though, as even 10 times larger slimes weren't exactly posing a threat at this point, because of course the guaranteed king slime spawn that followed would be the real deal here, which, I don't know how to put this,
Here he is.
just didn't turn up. Like, genuinely, I got the message and everything, and I think some boss music kicked in, but he was literally nowhere to be found. Bit of a weird one this, but probably for the best, as man, that guy was going to be chunky. Still though, this did not dilute the fact we'd have to fight yet another large rounded beast later that night, which after making a few last minute preparations for, would have its time to engulf my entire screen. Now, while I did try my best here to keep as much distance as possible, of course our ability to continuously do this would be very limited. So while I'd like to applaud our super dodging skills,
Oh, mate.
our fated defense was really to thank here, allowing us to just about manage to tank the Eye's final stage. And just like that, one of our world's mini colossal sized bosses was down. Tell you what though, I've got the feeling we wouldn't be so lucky going forward, as boss health was only going to get more substantial. Anyways, let's count our blessings for now, as with the Shield of Cthulhu in hand and a couple more eyes taken out for good measure, my own eyes were set on the Eater of Worlds now, which at this point I had no idea how I'd react to being supersized. And so with his quickly taking him down, jokes, we had some real preparation to do, which for starters, a weapon like this Unreal musket would contribute towards nicely, which after building an additional New York apartment for our arms dealer, would reach its full potential thanks to silver bullets. Okay, cool, we should be pretty much ready to go now. But if this pseudo Eater of Worlds was anything to go by, I wasn't holding my breath for success first time. But I guess we'll just have to see, because with another platform slash arena slash mixture of the two made, I guess it was time to find out. And guys, however you imagined this fight, I guarantee it didn't look like this.
Wait, what?
What the actual hell is going on here? It seems that in the process of becoming 10 times larger, it lost 10 times its amount of segments while on the way. Or no, perhaps judging by the increasingly alarming amount of time this fight was taking, it was simply sending them all in one by one, which did slightly change up the dynamics of this fight, I have to say. Funnily enough though, despite this on the surface appearing as a total doddle, I genuinely still have to try here, as those giant Val spit orbs were no joke, and nearly killed us on numerous occasions. For whatever reason I guess, supersizing this boss basically turns it into a multi-enemy bullet hell, which I wasn't complaining about, as although still extremely dependent on our mobility and the holy grail of the musket, we were just about able to endure all 7 minutes of this fight, and land ourselves another victory. What a weird one that was. All I can say is, hopefully this and the King Slime fight wouldn't be setting the trend for how bosses would be impacted by this modifier going forward, as I can see things becoming problematic later. I'll tell you what though, the distant future was the least of our worries right now, because after making this hearty shadow armor upgrade, I wanted to waste no time defeating Skeletron and getting in our dungeon now, as I don't think I have the words for how much I was craving a cobalt shield at this point, as those wacky hitboxes were starting to get on my nerves. So I mean, with my assumptions being that Skeletron wasn't going to be too much different from the eye fight, oh how wrong can you be, I figured that simply building an extra large arena would be sufficient. As we were about to find out the hard way though, Skeletron was just a whole different beast, having insanely high speed which kept up with the player no matter where I went. Yeah, not the start I hoped for. But you know, not the end of the world either, as the one good thing we could take from this was Skeletron's vulnerability to damage seemed to be a lot higher, allowing us to hit 3 bony targets at once with our Star Fury. So while it would be a deadly fight, it'd also probably be a quick one, which if you hadn't got the memo as to why we were collecting and building minecart track, in my mind only had one solution: speed and power, which with limited mobility options available for us in pre-hard mode, only made sense to construct a long-ass minecart track to create distance between us and it. This was only a theory though, and after returning the next night for a rematch, although it did provide a little bit of respite early on in the fight, soon did collapse in on itself, as damn, the cheating bugger could still keep up, which even after many attempts over the next few days, just seemed impossible with our current setup. And I mean, if anything, felt like we were actually making it less further. I guess we're not quite ready for Skeletron yet then. But that doesn't mean to say that we were giving up, as thankfully the non-linear progression of pre-hard mode meant we could get a lot stronger before our next rematch, which first required us to go ham on the invasion of giant goblin dudes, as I can sense the warding prefix being extra useful today. And with our Storm Spear making short work of this, it wasn't long before we'd be seeing some seriously beneficial reforging.
I just spent a platinum. I didn't get warding.
Kill me. Kill me now. And then making our way to hell for the first time to get our essentially free upgrade to Molten Armor. You know, I've always found the positioning of Hellstone super weird, as you're basically given early access to it after defeating your evil boss without anything in between. Who cares right now though, because this little bit of extra progression had just skyrocketed our defense to the mid-40s, and more critically, gave us access to higher damaging weapons. So I guess it was time for yet another rematch, which after maxing our defense even more, would not be relying on the minecart strat this time, as being locked in one place after he caught up was so much worse than at least having some chance to dodge. And dodge we did, sort of. With although loads of damage being unavoidable during certain stages of this fight, didn't feel as impossible. And yeah, while I'd love to say that we did this on our very first attempt, this fight was still really difficult to get right, taking us another attempt the following day to crack the code on and finally have Skeletron down.
Yes! Yes! Oh my god, look at that meteor head.
My god, that was a lot of work for just Skeletron. The good news was, however, although that fabled giant wall kill was on the horizon now, there was now a bunch more super powerful items we could obtain that I think would work super effectively against foes, starting with the as aforementioned Cobalt Shield, which was just quality of life at this point, and secondly, a shadow key to obtain a weapon I've actually had my eyes on for quite a while now. Yeah, the Hellwing Bow, an already fantastically strong vanilla weapon, which in my mind had all the DNA to be the total pre-hard mode meta in this particular playthrough. Let's think about it. Its only compromise for dealing super high piercing damage was its inaccuracy, which when everything is made 10 times larger, is pretty much made redundant. So with this whopper of a bow absolutely tearing through enemies now, while I had no doubt it would be capable at taking out the wall on its own, I did head to our jungle in hopes to cement this victory with some B-nades, which in hindsight, I wish I never bothered with, because a Socrates moment just had to happen.
I didn't see it.
Bruh, I mean, that's one bloody big B, and even if I did get time to finish the giant arena, I'm not sure we'll be defeating this thing underground anytime soon, even with our super high defense. But I digress. The Hellwing Bow would have to do, after all. Okay chaps, it's that time of the playthrough again, where I speed on through the painful process of making the, I've counted, 14th Hell Bridge this year. And this, like the last one, probably needed to be super long, as I had no idea how the wall's speed was going to scale with its size. And so after doing this, and taking out one pretty large voodoo demon for a pretty small voodoo doll, I suppose it was time for our very first attempt. Ooh, that's quite the amalgamation there. But you know what? Despite its lasers being ginormous, everything seemed pretty chill. And if that damage output was anything to go by, this fight was going to be the polar opposite of that skeleton experience earlier. Because just like that, the lengthy barricade of flesh was defeated on our first attempt. And here's an interesting little idiosyncrasy of increased size.
It's increased the size of the drop box.
It seems the reward box is also affected by this. Weird. This didn't stop us from claiming our spoils though, and just like that, things were about to set up another notch, as hard mode not only presented more powerful enemies and bosses, but also some very, very large ones, which wouldn't take us long to encounter at all, because without any delay, it was time to blitz through our hard mode or progression. Well, at least as quickly as I could, because the dangers of our underground were far more extreme than I envisioned even in my wildest dreams, with the stand here and die zone being a majority of the screen now. All I wanted was some Dam or a Calcomere, but I swear this rock golem had it in for me, spawning every single nanosecond I had a chance to move.
Ow! Whoa!
And those skeleton archers, man, let's just say those giant arrows had to be compensating for something, because are they really necessary? Anyway, let's compose ourselves for a minute.
Oh! Oh! No! Oh! Just get as much as you can.
Because slowly but surely we were making it through our hard mode or tree, and after much trial and error, finally managed to piece together enough of that precious adamantite to make a whopping great armor upgrade, which would hopefully restore my sanity back to at least 60%. Righto, that's one early hard mode experience I never want again, and I'm afraid I don't think things were going to get any more lax going forward, because we had the absolute terrors of the mech bosses to figure out now, which I'll tell you now, are not going to be straightforward. So I mean, the least we can do is exploit their regular weaknesses, I guess.
Go!
Which logically gives us the task of finding a way to choose the destroyer first. Now, while there is a bunch of great weapons for this, the dart rifle was particularly on my radar, as combined with cursed arrows, it had an almost screen-wide spread. And as you can see, although at first I once again underestimated just how large this thing would be, thankfully our previously useless minecart track was about to redeem itself and give us an almost completely safe way to kill as many huge mimics as I wanted. In typical fashion though, the Terraria dots had to sit me back where I belonged, because this took 11 kills to obtain. It's looking like one of these playthroughs now, innit? So the best we can do is fight it. And with this beautiful dart rifle with plenty of cursed darts now in hand, for the first time since entering hard mode, we began to feel super capable against some of the more fierce giant foes. What can I say? This weapon was just the perfect call for this challenge, man. Oh, why didn't I say anything? Because it was time to be slapped off that high horse once again, with the invasion of the freak mutant pirates, complete with 200mm blunderbusses. And if you think this is looking crazy already, wait until you see their ship.
What the?
Yeah. There's a really good chance this will be the largest single entity enemy we see today, covering a bit more than our entire screen. And its size for once did not make this easier to kill, and in fact just messed up all the hitboxes for its cannons, making this next 20 minutes of invasion an utter bollock. And afterwards, those megalodon-sized enemies weren't going to stop coming either, as although I'd been avoiding it, we had to defeat a wyvern for some wings, which, if I'm honest, looked more intimidating than it was, as although that huge hitbox was unavoidable, being able to hit all its segments at once meant we could kill it well before it became an issue. Additionally, while wings were a nice mobility upgrade, I spent a bit more time scavenging bits and bobs so that we could tinker our very own pair of Terra Spark boots, as for the first time ever, I was just beginning to understand that not damage and not defense, but evasion was going to be key. Right, okay, so I guess with this in mind, it was destroyer prep time, which started with another case of severe naivety, as bless my past self. For some reason I thought that just by making a platform a bit higher would be enough to stay clear, and oh how fun it is to be so hilariously wrong. Yeah, it seems that unlike the Eater, this one had stayed all stitched together. I tell you what though, in a flush of quick thinking, hopping on our minecart track as a last resort unironically seemed a solid place to start once again, as for a little bit, it actually seemed we were just about outrunning it. And the good news is, we hadn't even upgraded to the faster carts yet. So, a sky rail was once again the plan, which on a second attempt, although it looked much better at first, again just wasn't good enough. You know, I think the problem is, as soon as the destroyer is given any land to latch onto, it can easily arch onto our level. So I think some simple adjustments to our track height should do the trick here. Which, would you look at that, combined with some damage reforges, was working an absolute charm this time, with our only bottleneck being world length at this point, which by the looks of things, we won't even become close to hitting anyway. Because voila, somehow this 22-mile mechanical worm was down. God, I love the cursed art so much. But let's not get too overexcitable quite yet though, as we were only 1/3 of the way through 3 very distinctive bosses, which obviously will all react differently to being made king-sized. So, with the twins on our horizons now, I first wanted to try out an alternative weapon I think could maybe outperform the dart rifle on non-worm bosses. It's hardly a difficult guess, is it? Because the daedalus overused cheese bow just made the most sense at this point, which after obtaining easily enough through the same technique we use for corrupt mimics, would be doing all the heavy lifting going forward, which with a quick quiver obtained and reforged made, would have to waste no time showing its worth. Because it was time to face those 2 massive eyes, and these were some big uns, which, wait a minute, couldn't seem to keep up with our minecart at all. And Jesus Christ, that holy arrow Daedalus is working overtime here, allowing us to absolutely melt through their HP. And oh, I guess that's something I did not consider. I guess we'll have to fly closer to the sun next time then, which shouldn't be a problem, right? Yeah, of course not, because on our second run, we had it all figured out, and with the twins now completely powerless, we had our second mech boss down. Now, you'd think I'd be feeling pretty happy with how things were going now, as a simple minecart track seemingly solved all our problems. However, let's not forget what Skeletron Prime represents. A faster, stronger, tankier version of Skeletron, a boss we only defeated due to being able to soak up damage.
Okay.
And there you are, folks. My assumptions were correct. We'd not be outspeeding this thing with a minecart anytime soon, and there is no way we're out tanking that spinning attack. What to do? Well, desperate times call for desperate measures, I think, as there are a few ways we could push our player movement speed into the stratosphere instead, and it all goes back to that max movement video I made last year. You see, defeating one mech boss gives access to the Steampunker, which thanks to a sold Blend-O-Matic can make the movement enhancing tile known as Asphalt, which on its own isn't a revelation. However, combined with some other speed increasing methods, we can exponentially scale this into the far hundreds, including a base terrace back boot and the Magiluminescence, and for the cream on top, a carefully spaced spiked rhythm platform to perfectly proc a panic necklace into allowing speeds upwards of 160 miles per hour. I can't wait for this, so let's give it a go. And yeah, it seems that even a planet-sized Prime wouldn't be immune to the fastest man alive. And yeah, although he did now and again catch up and required us to redirect on this platform, this was infrequent enough to give us plenty of time to regen and continue chipping away at that big-headed robot. Not the most clean fight of the 3, but by far the one I'm most proud of. And honestly, I don't think I've ever done a movement speed build, not for the fun of it, but to actually take down a boss. It's an absolute W there. So, weird times for this playthrough now, as we'd be forced to fight our next 2 bosses underground, which would drastically restrict our options. And even though I was working on clearing out a massive space for Plantera, I'm pretty sure she'd fill all of it anyway, so the tanky direction would probably be the smartest way to go once again. So after clearing this crater and getting it all nice and organized, I wanted to first get a feel of what we'd be dealing with here, as there was always that off chance queen-sized Plantera wouldn't be that much of an issue after all. And well, spoiler, she most definitely would be an issue, posing a similar threat to our prime fight in that we just could not avoid her hitbox, which even though we rectified last time with movement speed, would not be possible this time because of our underground jungle restrictions. So yeah, I think I was right about having to go the tank route here, which conveniently did give us quite a few solutions at this point, first requiring a full pivot to melee, as this would not only offer some amazing weapons for large targets, like the absolutely elite Death Sickle, but also the armor to support our much needed high defense. And so after spending a bit of time making some simple but very important changes, it was time to rematch Plantera with the new me in place. And while this was definitely heading in the right direction now, with a simple dungeon spike substantially increasing our survivability from iframes, it still just wasn't enough. Just, as that second stage Plantera damage was just a little bit too high for our defenses. But with the taste of victory in sight, we weren't going to give up this strat quite yet, as with a bit of luck and more warding of a menacing reforges made, we were starting to get closer and closer. Oh, flipping out. Really? Oh, another one of these, I guess. Why is every fight gotta be bloody down to the wire? Which on our god knows what attempt, finally had the stars align for us, and just about got us over that Plantera hurdle. Man, that could have been it, you know. But we're still in it. And with Golem being our next target in sight, my expectations were surprisingly relaxed now, as despite Golem's slightly more threatening stats on paper, progressing past Plantera meant if you really needed to, excessive defensive measures could be put in place. I think we're going to have much bigger problems right now though, because the question won't be can we beat Golem, but rather can we spawn the blasted thing in, because that just really happened. Oh, and no, it wasn't just a freak crash, but a hard FU again off Terraria. How dare you even consider fighting Golem? Oh, it would be Golem as well, wouldn't it? So I guess, unless we slightly do bend the rules here, this was where this playthrough would end, at least from a technical perspective. However, I think you'd all get that a compromise would be understandable here, just so we could continue this video. And well, a 2 times larger Golem would have to do. Take it or leave it. Okay, well, if I was feeling confident about the outcome in this fight before, we literally had no excuse not to destroy this thing now. And well, yeah, it wasn't much of an event. I will still stick by this being harder than your average Golem fight, however, but with our current setup meant for tanking bosses the size of the screen, we had basically brought a Gatling gun to a rolling pin fight. And with that, in one way or another, Golem was down. Okay game, you did not like that one, but with our enemy size modifier set back up to 10 times, let's not lose focus of the next fight, which I actually did not intend to be the cultists right away actually, as I know it's a bit back and forth, but something tells me pivoting back into the high offensive Asian game would be the play going forward. Unfortunately for us though, for the type of weapon upgrade I was looking for, an Empress kill was required, which after spending some time spamming down Pelstone blocks in the top left of our monorail, would be given our first shot.
Oh my Christ, on a bite.
Which couldn't have been any further from successful. Yeah, not only was the Empress fast enough to keep up, but performed an attack that was essentially a screen-wide insta-wipe of death.
Whoa, my game's lagging. Oh my god.
For heaven's sake, please don't crash my game again. Anyway, obviously we were quite the way off an Empress kill at this point, which probably meant we wouldn't be ready for the pillars either. So let's get our act together. Firstly, with a weapon upgrade I honestly think performed great, without requiring too much extra work to obtain. Hell yeah, Terrorblade time. And on top of this, you know those excessive measures I mentioned earlier? I think we had no choice but to go for them now, with an hour of Paladin shield grinding coming right on up. To be honest though, this wasn't nearly as infuriating as it could have been, as the Paladins were pretty hopeless in their colossal form. Righto, we've skipped a bit of time now, with our accessory and armor combo hopefully giving us near to the absolute highest damage reduction we could achieve, which in combination with our far more powerful Terrorblade in hand, hopefully would be enough to get a prestigious Empress drop. And damn right we were, because even on expert mode, the amount of tankiness you can achieve by stacking those shield tinkers is just unreal, and if this damage kept up, would hopefully result in a victory. I've got to be real though, this was giving me massive Plantera PTSD, because it was going to be another excruciatingly close one.
Oh my god! Literally free health.
Oh, we robbed Empress with that one. And if you thought it couldn't get any better, actually rewarded us with the Eventide. Possibly one of, if not the best pre-player in the game, and our hard carry for the endgame. Sweet stuff. So let's not waste any more time getting on with that, with the obliteration of some very large cultist worshippers initializing that dreaded fight, which apart from some great balls of fire coming our way that we had to dodge, was actually an absolute joke compared to everything else we'd faced in hard mode. I guess its teleporting movement just meant no increased movement at all, as sometimes we actually had to wait for the idiot to catch up. Oh, and about the Eventide. Well, it was doing god's damage with those holy arrows, and would without a doubt be our weapon of choice for the pillars, which the Beak of the Devil had just begun invading our world, in their largeness. I was not looking forward to this bit, which was pretty understandable. However, in practice, while being out in the open was an absolute death sentence here, finding a spot like this let us completely exploit the diminishing parts of enemy size up, allowing us to hit them when they couldn't hit us. Now, of course, this didn't work for every pillar, and getting mobile to destroy what was just a giant background of lunar flesh was weird, but progress was being made much faster than it had any right to, as a 10 times larger crawlipede was previously a thing of my nightmares, but in reality was just an easier target to hit. And after probably an average amount of time spent taking out those megalithic lunar invaders, I guess it was finally time to fight the holy grail of all large specimens, the king of kings in this sizably mutated world. A guy so big, you can't tell if it's the night sky or his backside. Oh yeah, the Moonlord was...
He's in! He's small. He's tiny.
Yes, sorry. I just had to hype that bit up, because for whatever reason, my man just wanted to stay regular sized. Seriously, the modifier is still turned on here, but the Moonlord just doesn't seem to care. I'll tell you what did care though, all his dangerous projectiles, which if I could choose a part of him not to enlarge, would be all of them. Because despite his less threatening looks on the front cover, inside was still genuinely going to be a bugger of a fight. And man, dodging some of these things were just ridiculous. Like, are we just making up hitboxes now? And even with our Vortex Beta unable to miss, resulted in a death with the Lord still healthy as heck. Yeah. As expected, we were going to need to once again improve mobility, which due to all the intercut dodging required, could not rely on the minecart or spiky track this time, but instead a much more classic solution, which assuming we could rise victorious here, would of course be the Shrimpy Truffle Mount. Bet you never saw that one coming. Which thanks to our previously mastered Skeletron Prime strategy, took us no time at all to have in hand. Righto, Moonlord again, which was really testing my Terraria skills here, as the problem wasn't having larger things to dodge, but rather deceiving things to dodge, because where those projectiles looked like they were on screen, wasn't where they would actually deal damage.
Wow, man.
Yeah, another BS death right there. But practice would make perfect, and the more we did it, the more I'd begin to learn where I could and could not go. And with the Vortex Beta in combination with the Mount being a fan favourite combo for this fight, it was only inevitable that we'd find ourselves victorious soon. And after a good few attempts at one of the most cursed fights I've ever partaken,
Yes.
we had done it.
Okay, that was a playthrough.
The big, but not so big Moonlord was defeated. Man, what a weirdly fun playthrough that was, which offered far more of a challenge than I originally expected. If you've made it all the way to the end, what a legend. And of course, if you enjoyed our journey today, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. Also let me know what challenge you want to see next down below. This has been sockrteez, and I'll see you in the next one.